After a local family is found torn apart, a small town spirals into chaos, uncovering a terrifying predator that may not be alone. I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your chilling host. If you're already part of our pack, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what rises from the depths of darkness and unfolds before you. Now, let's begin. I had been with the Gallatin County Sheriff's Department for 16 years. You'd think I'd seen it all by now. Car wrecks, overdoses, even the occasional grisly mauling. But nothing prepares you for when you see a body ripped apart like wet paper. It was late October when the call came in. A hunter had stumbled across a corpse about 5 miles south of Bozeman, just inside the Gallatin National Forest. I remember the dispatcher's voice, low, shaky, like she didn't believe what she was reading from the report. "Sheriff Langston," she said. "You're going to want to see this yourself." The woods were damp from last night's snowmelt. Mud clung to my boots as I pushed through the underbrush, following the game trail until the stench hit. I've smelled decomposition before. It's unforgettable. But this was different. Fresher, yet somehow fouler, like whatever had killed this man left him to rot on purpose. The victim's name was Vincent Laramie, local guy, 38 years old, out bow hunting elk. We found him in a clearing, slumped against a tree with his chest cavity torn wide open. His ribcage was shattered like it had exploded outward. His guts were spread in a 10-foot arc, steam still rising from the organs in the morning cold. And his face. God help me, his face was gone. Not torn, not chewed, removed. Like something had peeled it clean off and taken it with them. Deputy Nina Ferris stood behind me, covering her mouth. "You think it was a bear?" I looked down at the torn flesh, at the claw marks embedded in the bark beside Vincent's body. 4 deep gouges, at least 2 inches between them. No bear did this. We called in the county coroner. While she worked, I walked the perimeter with a flashlight. That's when I noticed the tracks, huge barefoot prints pressed into the wet soil. Too long for a man, toes too spread out, and the depth. Whatever made them weighed at least 300 pounds. I followed them for about 50 yards until they vanished near a dried-out stream. No drag marks, no signs of running. Just gone. Back at the station, I tried to log the report as an animal attack, but it didn't sit right with me. Vincent's gear was untouched. His rifle was leaning against a tree, fully loaded. There was no sign he even fired it. A man dies like that and doesn't even try to defend himself. The local news picked up the story that night. They used sanitized language. Grisly discovery. Possible mountain lion attack. But people in Bozeman aren't stupid. Rumors started immediately. Social media lit up with theories. Serial killer, escaped lab experiment, even skinwalkers. And one name kept coming up again and again in the comments. Werewolf. I didn't believe in that crap. Still don't. But something had killed Vincent Laramie. And it wasn't anything I'd seen in these woods before. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, nursing a bottle of bourbon. Outside, the wind howled through the pine trees like a warning. My dog, Duke, wouldn't stop pacing. Every time he heard a noise, his ears perked, tail low, growling at the shadows just beyond the porch. At 3:12 a.m., my phone rang. It was Ferris. Her voice was trembling. "Sheriff, there's another one, a family out by Highlight Canyon. You better come quick." I threw on my jacket, grabbed my flashlight and sidearm, and ran to the truck. The wind was picking up now, carrying a strange scent, something musky. Feral, like sweat and old meat. As I sped down the dark road south of town, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me from the trees. The first body was just the beginning. By the time I got to the house in Hyalite Canyon, the place was already surrounded by flashing lights. Deputies, paramedics, even a few local volunteers stood outside, pale and silent, like they'd all seen something they weren't ready for. I could see the ambulance doors still open. No one was loading anything in. The house belonged to the Madsen family. They'd moved up here from Denver 6 months ago. Husband, wife, and 2 young kids. I'd met Mark Madsen once when he came in to register a firearm. Quiet guy. Seemed decent. I stepped through the front door and immediately caught the stench of blood and bile. The living room looked like a war zone. Furniture overturned, claw marks across the drywall, blood sprayed in patterns no human could create. But the worst was in the hallway. The first body was Michelle Madsen. Her torso was torn open, ribs pried apart like wings. One of her legs was missing entirely. I found it later, in the kitchen, stuffed into the oven like someone had hidden it there in a panic. Her face was intact, but the terror in her eyes hadn't faded. Down the hall, we found Mark's body. He'd put up a fight. His hunting knife was buried into something's shoulder. We found a large clump of black fur clinging to the handle. But it hadn't helped him. His neck was broken, twisted all the way around. The children were gone, not dead, not hiding. Gone. We searched the woods for hours. Dogs refused to go more than a few yards past the tree line. One of them, a German shepherd named Rex, clawed at the back of its handler's cruiser until its paws bled. Whatever had taken those kids had gone into the forest, and the forest didn't want us following. Later that day, Ferris showed me something disturbing. She'd talked to a neighbor who lived about half a mile away. The woman, an older widow named Eleanor Kintz, said she'd heard something around midnight. Not screams, howls. Low, throaty sounds, rising in pitch, almost mournful. She said it reminded her of something she once heard when she visited Yellowstone as a child. Wolves howling across the valley. Only this one was closer and deeper. Not an animal, she said. Something pretending to be. She'd recorded it on her phone. The audio was distorted and grainy, but it turned my stomach. The sound started as a long, guttural growl, then shifted into something like speech. Not English, but not animal either. Like a voice submerged in water. I forwarded the clip to a contact at the University of Montana who specialized in bioacoustics. He replied with a single line, "That's not a bear. That's not anything natural." As the hours passed, the town started to feel different. People were locking their doors early, stores closed before sunset. Conversations in diners turned into whispered warnings. Someone posted online that the creature was the Montana Devil and swore their grandfather had told them stories about something like this living in the mountains. A few nights later, Amanda Rowe, a college student living in a cabin off the highway, called 911 just before dawn. She was crying, panicked, barely coherent. "It was outside my window," she said. "It watched me. It just stood there." When deputies arrived, they found deep claw marks on the porch railing. A trail of dark, sticky fluid, thicker than blood, led into the woods behind the cabin. Amanda hadn't imagined it. When I talked to her the next morning, she described it with terrifying clarity. Tall, well over 6.5 feet, thick with muscle. It stood upright but moved in sudden jerks, like something that didn't belong in its own body. Its skin was pale and stretched over the bone, with patches of coarse black hair across its shoulders. And the eyes, she said they glowed faintly in the dark. Not like reflection from light, but like something burning inside them. I asked her if it made a sound. She nodded. It whispered something. I couldn't understand it, but I heard it say my name. That detail chilled me more than the rest. No animal speaks names. I left Amanda's place feeling the pressure of something ancient pressing against our town, like the forest had grown teeth and was testing our borders. Then came the last call of the night. A man named Curtis Holbrook had called in a report of something dragging my brother into the woods. Deputies responded in minutes. They found Curtis stumbling out of the trees, covered in blood, clothes torn, shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't stop it, he kept repeating. It was too fast. It wasn't human. We asked him what it looked like. All he could say was, its mouth was wrong. We never found his brother. That morning, I walked to my cruiser and noticed something on the windshield. 3 long scratches, shallow but deliberate, carved through the glass like it was plastic. This thing wasn't hiding anymore. It was hunting, and it knew who we were. Curtis Holbrook hadn't slept since the night his brother was taken. He was a mess, eyes bloodshot, hands trembling, his shirt still stained with dried blood. We kept him in a holding room at the station for observation. I sat across from him, watching him rock slowly in the plastic chair. Curtis, I said, I need you to tell me again. What happened in the woods? His gaze was fixed on the floor. It waited for us, like it knew we were coming. You said you were tracking something. He nodded. Big tracks. We thought it was a bear, or maybe an injured elk. But then we saw the trees, scratches too high, like 9-10 feet up. That's when Brian started to worry. I leaned forward. You followed it? We had rifles. We thought we were ready, but it wasn't scared. It circled us. We kept hearing twigs snap, heavy breathing. Brian turned around and... He stopped talking, his hands curled into fists. It took him so fast, just pulled him into the dark. I heard bones snap. I waited. He raised his head slowly, but there wasn't just one. There were 2. That froze me. You're sure? He nodded again. I saw eyes behind the trees, watching. Same glow, same shape. It wasn't alone. Until now, we had believed we were hunting one creature, one anomaly. If Curtis was telling the truth, then we weren't looking at a single predator. We were dealing with a species. I left the room with Ferris beside me. You think he's telling the truth? She asked. I think he believes it, I said. And honestly, I'm starting to believe it too. That evening I met with a group of locals, hunters, former Marines, survivalists. Guys who knew the land better than anyone. I laid everything out for them. The bodies, the tracks, the witnesses. And then I asked for help. One of them, a Vietnam vet named Carl Enders, spoke first. I've seen things in these woods that shouldn't exist, he said. Something's out there. And it's not just passing through. It's nesting. That word chilled me. Nesting. We planned a patrol of the southern forest line. Not some amateur manhunt. Real weapons, trained men, coordinated movement. Our goal, track it, locate its den, and put it down. We went out that night in teams of 3. I was with Ferris and Carl. We kept radios on a closed frequency and moved slowly under the cover of night. The forest felt different, heavier, as if every tree had eyes. Around midnight, we picked up movement on the edge of a frozen creek bed. Ferris spotted it first, just a flicker between trees, a massive silhouette moving fast and low. We followed, guns ready, but it led us somewhere unexpected. To a clearing deep in the woods, where we found something far worse than a creature. There were bones, dozens of them, human, animal, cracked open and gnawed, arranged in patterns, circles, spirals, strange symbols scratched into the dirt. In the center was something that made me recoil. A child's jacket. Bright blue, torn and soaked with blood. Carl cursed under his breath. "It's feeding here. This is its ground." Before we could retreat, the radios went off. Screaming. Gunfire. Another team, maybe half a mile east of us, had made contact. I shouted into the radio, but only static came back. We ran toward them, pushing through the brush as fast as we could. And then we found what was left. 2 men torn apart, one with his throat ripped out, the other missing half his face. The third was gone, only a trail of blood dragging off into the trees. Carl held up his flashlight and pointed at something on a nearby rock. A handprint, smudged, wet, but impossibly large, and not quite human. The fingers were too long. The palm had claws embedded. And the shape, it was like a man had tried to become a beast but hadn't finished. We heard movement all around us, cracking branches, shifting leaves, not one direction, multiple. We were surrounded. Ferris turned to me. "Sheriff, this isn't a predator anymore. This is a pack." Then, from the shadows beyond the light, came a deep growl. Not a warning, not fear, a challenge. By the time we got back to town, Bozeman was in a state of siege. Word had gotten out. Someone had leaked photos from the scene, images of what was left of the men from the failed patrol. Bloody, shredded remains on frost-covered ground. They were spreading like wildfire through local groups and forums. People weren't waiting for us to act anymore. They were boarding up homes, sleeping with rifles, abandoning the outskirts entirely. The police line was melting under pressure. This wasn't just a predator. It was a war waiting to happen. That morning we found the Miller family. Their house sat on the edge of South Cottonwood Canyon Road, isolated 2 miles from the nearest neighbor. I knew them. Steve Miller ran the local hardware store. His wife Dana was a teacher. They had a little boy, Matthew, 7 years old. Always wore that red cap with a dinosaur on it. The front door was broken in, not kicked, but smashed, torn off the hinges like it had been hit with a car. Inside, everything was chaos. Blood on the ceiling. Footprints, bare, wide, heavy, tracked through the house. It didn't kill quickly. It moved room to room. We found Steve first, or what was left. Half of his body was wedged beneath the staircase, ribs torn open, skull crushed. Dana was in the bathtub, arms broken backward, mouth frozen in a scream. A crucifix was clutched in her left hand, snapped in half. There was no sign of Matthew. Just his cap, soaked in blood, lying in the snow outside near the back porch. One of my deputies, Connor Price, broke down when he saw it. He had 2 kids of his own. He threw up behind the shed and didn't come back for the rest of the day. This wasn't just killing. It was selecting. I called an emergency meeting at City Hall. Officials, law enforcement, hunters, even townsfolk who'd served in the military. We packed into that room like survivors in a storm shelter. I stood in front and told them the truth. No more lies, no more blaming mountain lions. "There's something out there," I said. "It walks on 2 legs, it thinks, and it kills like nothing we've ever seen. It's hunting families now." "What the hell is it?" someone shouted. "A werewolf," another scoffed. Laughter, nervous and sharp, echoed in the room. "I don't care what word you use," I snapped. "Call it whatever makes you sleep at night. But know this, it's stronger than us, it's faster than us, and it is not afraid." I showed them photos of the claw marks on Steve Miller's walls, deep gouges in solid wood. I passed around the autopsy notes from the coroner, who'd fled town that morning after refusing to perform a second examination. One line stood out: bite radius consistent with human jaw structure, but strength exceeds that of any known mammal. That night, we posted armed patrols around the outskirts. I stayed with Ferris in a squad car parked outside a small ranch near Bridger Canyon. The owners had evacuated. Their livestock hadn't. We were only an hour into our shift when the horses started screaming. We rushed toward the stables. The smell hit first, raw, wet, acidic, like rotting meat soaked in gasoline. Then, we saw it. The creature was inside the pen. 7 feet tall, shoulders like a grizzly, long arms covered in bristled black fur, its legs bent like a wolf's, but it stood upright. Its face was elongated, muzzle twitching as it sniffed the air, but the eyes were human, and they locked onto us. Ferris raised her shotgun and fired. The blast hit it in the chest, blood sprayed, and the thing staggered, but it didn't go down. It turned to the nearest horse and ripped its throat out with a single motion, then leapt through the side of the stable, smashing through wood and into the trees. We followed. The blood trail led us to the ridge behind the ranch. We found more footprints, more signs, and something else, another print, slightly smaller, following the same path, a second one. As we stood there, processing the impossible, Ferris whispered, "Sheriff, what if these aren't just animals?" "What do you mean?" "What if they used to be people?" The idea landed like a punch to the chest. That's when my radio crackled. "Base to Sheriff Langston, we have multiple 911 calls from the Eastern Subdivision. Reports of something moving through backyards. One caller says it was standing on their roof." Ferris and I ran to the car and tore down the icy road. This time, it wasn't going after a single home. It was in the middle of the neighborhood. And it wasn't alone. The call had come from Maple Crest Drive, a quiet subdivision on Bozeman's east side. Wide streets, clean lawns, trimmed hedges, families, kids. The kind of neighborhood where nothing bad ever happens. Until that night. We arrived to find panic in the streets. Neighbors yelling, doors slamming shut, porch lights flicking on like fireflies in panic. Several houses had damage, claw marks across siding, windows shattered from the outside, footprints pressed into mud-soaked lawns. But the worst was the last house on the block, Jillian Mooney's home. We found her in the garage, half naked, barefoot, soaked in blood. Her left hand was wrapped in a rag that had once been a towel, now soaked through and dripping. She held a fire axe in her right hand, the blade stained black and still warm. When she saw me, she dropped the axe and collapsed. "I hit it," she whispered. "I hit it in the face." Jillian was a 29-year-old ER nurse, lived alone. No pets, no kids. The perfect target. She'd been reading in bed when she heard something moving on the roof. At first, she thought it was raccoons, until the ceiling creaked like it was about to cave in. She got up, grabbed her flashlight, and went into the hall. That's when the thing came through the skylight. "It fell," she said, voice trembling. "Like it knew I'd be there. It landed right in front of me." She described it clearly. Its skin was stretched tight over raw muscle. Patches of hair ran down its spine and its jaw. "It didn't open like a human's," she said. "It split, like something unhinging." She ran, made it to the garage, locked the door behind her. That's where she kept the axe, for fire emergencies. The thing followed. She said it didn't break the door. It waited. It scraped its claws slowly across the surface, teasing her, listening. Then it lunged. The fight was short and desperate. It pinned her against the wall, one claw digging into her shoulder. She swung the axe blindly, connecting with the side of its face. It screamed. Not like an animal, like a man being burned alive. Then it ran. We searched the area around the house. Blood, thick and dark, trailed through the backyard, over the fence, and into a wooded section behind the neighborhood. I ordered a perimeter, but it was useless. Whatever it was long gone. Still, something had changed. This time, someone survived. And she had hurt it. Ferris and I sat with Jillian in the ambulance while medics worked on her hand. She was shaking, but steady. Angry, not broken. "I don't think it expected me to fight back," she said. "Most people don't." She looked me in the eyes. "Sheriff, what if they're testing us, seeing how far they can go?" I didn't answer, because I was starting to think the same thing. Back at the station, I studied the axe. There was flesh stuck in the blade. Gray, leathery, unlike anything I'd ever seen. I sent it to the university lab for analysis. The preliminary report came back the next morning. Skin shows both human and non-human markers. Muscle fibers are hyperdense, more consistent with predatory mammals. DNA partially degraded. Unable to identify full sequence. Possibility. Artificial mutation, or unknown evolutionary variant. Artificial. That word lingered. Ferris showed me something else. Security camera footage from a neighbor's doorbell cam. It only lasted 3 seconds, but it changed everything. At 2:41 a.m., the creature walked across their front lawn. Not crawled, not ran. Walked. Upright. Calm. Like it owned the night. Its head turned toward the camera for a brief moment. And that's when I saw it. A scar across its jaw. A fresh wound. Jillian had marked it. That same morning, another body turned up. A man who'd gone missing 2 days earlier. Luke Chandler, 44. His corpse was found hanging from a tree outside the city limits. No blood, no eyes, but something was carved into his chest. 3 claw marks, deep and precise, not slashes, a symbol. "This is a warning," Ferris said. "It's not just killing anymore. It's sending messages." We were no longer dealing with a beast acting on instinct. We were dealing with something that knew exactly what it was doing. That night, we gathered our weapons and set up a safe house at the edge of town. Jillian came with us, refused to be left behind. She wanted to help. She wanted revenge. We waited. And around 3 a.m., it returned. We had 12 people in the safe house, officers, hunters, volunteers, all armed, all ready. We set up spotlights, motion sensors, tripwires with flares, and silent alarms. The building was an old ranger station on the edge of the Bridger Mountains, with only one way in or out. Remote, quiet, defensible. Or so we thought. Jillian sat beside the back exit, her wounded hand now stitched and bandaged. She gripped the fire axe like it was a lifeline. Ferris paced along the windows, rifle slung tight. I stayed near the central radio, listening for static, waiting for anything. At 2:47 a.m., the power went out. No sound, no crash, just darkness. The backup generator kicked in, but only enough to keep the emergency lights glowing. Pale red filled the room like blood in water. One by one, the motion sensors began to blink. First the north side, then the west, then east. "They're surrounding us," Ferris said. I grabbed the radio. "Teams Alpha and Bravo, report. Do you see movement?" Silence. "Repeat. Do you see anything?" A whisper came through, broken, low. "They're already inside." Then screaming, gunfire, and nothing. I turned to Carl Enders, the vet. He already had his night vision scope up. "They're flanking," he said. "Fast. Coordinated, not like animals." Something slammed into the side of the building, hard. The walls shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Another hit, closer. Then a sound, metal tearing. "They're trying to rip through the siding," Ferris said. "We need to move now." Jillian opened a trap door in the floor, an old maintenance tunnel that ran out into the woods. Not ideal, but it was that or wait to be ripped apart. We went in fast, one by one. I was last. As I pulled the hatch shut, I saw something through the window. Eyes. Not glowing now. Reflecting. Watching. The tunnel was narrow, barely tall enough to crawl through. Dirt and stones scraped our backs as we moved. We had flashlights, but every noise behind us made our hearts stutter. Something was moving above. Tracking. About halfway through, we heard it drop in behind us. A heavy thud, then claws on concrete. Carl turned and fired 3 shots. The sound echoed like thunder. Screaming followed. Not his. Something else, but it didn't stop. We reached the end of the tunnel and emerged in a grove behind the tree line. Snow was falling. The forest was too quiet. Everyone was accounted for, except Carl. Ferris looked back at the hatch. "We can't go back," I said. She didn't argue. We moved through the woods, flashlights off, using only moonlight. Jillian led the way. Every few feet we found signs, scratches on trees, broken branches, strange symbols drawn in the snow. "They're hurting us," she said, "pushing us somewhere." She was right. We came to a ravine, deep, narrow, with no way across. Then came the howls. Not just one, many. They rose together, from different sides, echoing over the hills like sirens. Then silence, then rustling in the trees. We set up a line, backs to the ravine, weapons raised. "They're coming," Ferris said. And they did. The first one burst from the dark. Snarling, fast, lunging, Ferris dropped it with a shotgun blast to the chest. It fell, twitched, and went still. Then 2 more appeared. I shot one through the knee. Jillian swung her axe into the side of the other's skull. It didn't die. It screamed, then it spoke. Not clearly, not human speech, but syllables. Intent. A voice rasped through twisted vocal cords. "Stop!" We froze. It stood, bleeding from the face, eye hanging loose, bones cracked. But it stayed upright. "Your kind. End." Then it collapsed. Behind us, something moved, quietly. I turned just in time to see Carl crawling up from the ravine, alive, but not unharmed. His chest was covered in blood, his eyes wide, and in his hand, he held a chunk of flesh, black, pulsating, still twitching. "They bleed," he said. "They can die." Carl collapsed into the snow, face pale, lips blue. He held the bleeding chunk of flesh like a trophy, but he was fading fast. Ferris and I dragged him back to the tree line while Jillian covered us. We had to move, fast. We made it to an old fire watch station built into the hillside, abandoned for years, but sturdy. We barricaded the entrance, laid Carl out on a table, and started treating the wounds. He'd been torn up, deep claw gashes across his chest, a bite on his shoulder, but he was still conscious. "I stabbed it in the gut," he said through gritted teeth. Felt the bones snap. It still tried to talk. "Talk?" Ferris asked. "What did it say?" He looked at her, blood drying on his teeth. It said my name. That silenced the room. Carl had never encountered it before, but it had recognized him. Jillian took the flesh sample, dropped it into a bag, and sealed it tight. It was still warm, the tissue twitching slightly under the plastic. "We need to get this to someone who can analyze it. We need answers now." I nodded, but deep down, I knew we didn't need a lab to explain what we already feared. They weren't just beasts. They were people once, and some of them still were. I turned to the group. 7 of us left. "We're not hunting a creature anymore. We're hunting a sickness, something that hides in human skin." That changed everything. We started running names. Who had disappeared recently? Who had shown signs? Jillian brought up an incident from weeks earlier. An EMT named Barry Tullman had vanished after a rescue call in the woods. No body was ever found. His sister said he came home that night covered in blood, muttering about teeth in the trees. Next morning, he was gone. We dug into Barry's file. No history of violence, but he was at the Madsen house the night before the killings. He'd seen something, maybe been something, It clicked into place like a rotten puzzle. This thing wasn't turning people. It was choosing them. And maybe they wanted it. We set up night watch in shifts. Jillian and I took the second rotation. Around 2:30 a.m., she leaned over and whispered, "I keep thinking about the one I hit. The scar I left." "What about it?" "It didn't kill me. It could have. But it stopped, looked at me, like it recognized me." "You think it knew you?" "No. I think it remembered." She paused. "What if these things aren't just infected? What if their minds are still in there, rotting?" That thought stuck with me like a thorn. An hour later, the motion sensor triggered. We rushed to the window. Nothing. But the snow had changed. There were footprints. One set. Human. We followed them at dawn, out through the ridge, down the slope, toward the old quarry road. And that's where we saw him. A man, naked, pale, walking slowly through the snow, barefoot. We raised our weapons, but he didn't flinch. I shouted, "Stop! Identify yourself!" He turned around. His face was torn, partially healed claw marks across the jaw. One eye missing, the same wound Jillian had inflicted. It was him, but he looked human. His chest rose and fell. He spoke clearly. "My name is Barry Tullman." Ferris lowered her rifle, shocked. "That's not possible." "I remember everything," he said. "What I did, what I became." Jillian stepped forward, rage in her voice. "You killed that family." "I watched it happen," Barry said. "I couldn't stop it. It's like being a passenger inside your own body." I kept my finger on the trigger. "You're infected." He nodded. "But I broke through. Only for a while. It always comes back. The hunger." Ferris asked, "How many are there?" Barry looked up toward the tree line. "They don't count themselves anymore, because they don't have to." "What does that mean?" I asked. He stepped forward, slowly, arms raised. "It means you're already too late." Then his mouth twisted. His skin rippled. His jaw split down the middle, and he lunged. Barry's transformation was instantaneous. His skin bulged, bones snapping under the surface, black fur ripping through muscle. His scream became a gurgling growl as his mouth split fully open, revealing rows of teeth that had no right to fit in a human jaw. Jillian swung the axe. The blade hit him in the chest, burying halfway through, but it barely slowed him. I emptied my sidearm. 4 shots hit center mass. He didn't fall. Ferris tackled him from the side, giving Jillian just enough time to rip the axe free and swing again, this time catching his throat. Barry collapsed to his knees, gasping, blood pouring from his neck like oil. He tried to speak, mouth twitching. Then he went still. Dead. We stood there, soaked in blood, the snow stained black around us. But the forest wasn't quiet. The wind shifted, and we heard it. Multiple voices, low and rising, not howls but chants, not words, tones, rhythms, something ancient. "They know he's dead," Ferris said. We moved fast. Back to the station. We needed to regroup, call in support. But when we arrived, we found the front door open, and Carl missing. The others were gone too. No bodies, no signs of a fight, just silence, and blood smeared across the walls in crude symbols. We followed the trail into the woods. It led us to a cave system none of us had ever seen before, a natural series of openings in the side of the mountain, hidden by pine and shadow. Inside, the air was thick and hot, like the forest itself was breathing. And there they were, 6 of them. All changed, all monstrous. Carl stood among them, naked, eyes glowing. He looked right at me. "It was never about survival," he said. "It's about evolution." "We trusted you," Ferris said, her voice cracking. "I didn't die in that ravine," he replied. I was born. He stepped forward. I raised my rifle. But Jillian was faster. She threw a flare, lit bright red, into the center of the cave. They recoiled, screeching. One lunged. I fired. The bullet hit its head and it collapsed in a heap. Then chaos erupted. Jillian fought like a machine, cleaving through arms, claws, bone. Ferris took 2 down with point-blank blasts. I shot until the rifle clicked empty, then pulled my knife. The fight was brutal. Animalistic. Close. Carl was the last. I tackled him to the ground, knife to his throat. "You're still in there," I said. "I don't want to be," he replied. Then he pushed the blade into his own neck. When it was over, we stood in the cave, soaked in blood, shaking, broken, but alive. For now. We sealed the entrance, burned the bodies, and made our way back to Bozeman. The town was quiet. Too quiet. Days passed. The press never heard the truth. The official story was a gas leak in a ranger station. No one asked questions. But I did, because 3 days later, a hiker went missing near Gallatin Peak. They found his tent shredded, blood everywhere, and footprints. The same kind. 2 sets. Smaller this time. You see, it never ends. We killed the monsters that night. But we didn't stop the infection. Somewhere out there, in the cold dark of Montana, under the trees and snow, something is waiting for the moon to rise. Again. What happened in Bozeman is a brutal testament to how easily the line between man and monster can vanish under a full moon. The rise of the pack has only just begun, and we'll be watching the shadows to uncover what comes next. If this story made your skin crawl, hit like. Comment below. What moment chilled you the most? Share this with someone who still believes werewolves are just stories before they meet one. And if you're bold enough to keep searching the dark with us, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and ring the bell. Because the next scream might be yours.